What's something that these shiny Pokemon all have in common? They're all from Gens 1 to 5 and they all barely change. You see, to find out if shiny Pokemon's designs are getting worse, we first gotta understand how they're made. But this is where things get a bit messy. No one actually knows how they're made because there isn't any official statement addressing this directly. Some believe that they're all handmade and chosen, while others think that shiny forms from generations 1 to 5 were created through an algorithm. And when they jumped to 3D models in Gen 6 and onwards is where they started to hand make them individually. But how true is this? Well, looking at the colors alone, there are many instances in generations 1 to 5 where Pokemon, especially from Gens 1 to 3, with the same base colors having the same shiny colors. Some obvious patterns are most blue Pokemon, especially water types, turning to pink, grass types turning from green to that autumn-like color scheme, some purples turning to green, reds going to blue and vice versa, some shades of blue going to gold, and the list goes on. However, there are many cases where these patterns are broken as presented by this famous picture here posted by Dr. Lava. And at face value, this is true. Throughout generations 1 to 5, you'll find a lot of examples of Pokemon with the same base colors not turning into what some of the color patterns suggest they would. But then, the YouTuber by the name of Locksteen did a video study analyzing the shinies of Generation 2 to finally put this debate to rest. I won't cover everything he did, so go check out his analysis after, but he found that if there was an algorithm for making shinies, it goes beyond just base color analysis. It takes into consideration much more aspects of a Pokemon, like its typing, if it evolves, if it resembles the colors of its previous evolutions, and much more on top of its base colors. Which is why you see fighting types from Generation 1 turn green regardless of their base colors, Gens 1 to 3 normal and flying types turning yellow and green, Gens 1 to 5 base normal types turning brown, and the list goes on. But with all these algorithmic variables presented, it still is just a theory, as there are many outliers to patterns, especially the further from Gen 2 you look. But this also can be interpreted as the algorithm used for each generation just getting more complicated with the addition of colors available on each new console the games came out on respectively. Gen 2 sprites generally only had around 2 base colors for each Pokemon because of the hardware limitations, but Pokemon's designs and their color schemes got more complex the further technology advanced to the DS. But does this mean that there was no developer intervention when approving shinies? No. Which is why all of this is still just a theory. Especially when it comes to some older designs moving from their Game Boy Color sprites to the Game Boy Advance, which allowed for more detailed imagery. Some were changed to look more natural, or in some cases just better. The point is that no one is 100% certain, but every generation, even Gen 5, although probably the one that follows its own unique, different algorithmic rules the most compared to its previous generations, still all have some sort of pattern that heavily suggests an algorithm with occasional developer assistance and changes, with some hard to explain outliers here and there. So then, if Pokemon Shinies were made by an algorithm from Gens 1 to 5, does that mean that they're worse than the newer handmade Shinies? Well, it just means that many older Shinies don't make too much sense. They're just random colors that don't add another element to the Pokemon's design. And even when they do, it's usually by accident and or developer intervention, but those are few and far between. Don't get me wrong, some of my favorite shiny Pokemon are from the generations that are so-called algorithm shinies. But it's so disappointing when many of my favorite Pokemon designs, especially those I grew up with, have lackluster shinies that don't make any sense and seem like an afterthought. In this video I said I don't like some of Scarlet and Violet's Pokemon color schemes because they're too highlighter looking. But sadly this is the case for many of the Gens 1 to 5 algorithm shinies, which makes some Pokemon worse than the original. But are the hand-picked shinies from Generation 6 and onwards really that much better? Well, let me explain. Starter shinies are finally treated with the respect that they deserve, with completely contrasting colors that pop out instantly. Many of the colors feel smartly chosen with a purpose behind them. Even for seemingly simple and not so popular designs, it makes a world's difference. I don't even like some of these Pokemon's normal designs, but love their shinies as they sometimes tone down the more saturated and highlighter color scheme of the originals to a more natural and grounded look, which goes to show how important color scheme is to a design. This isn't to say that there aren't any shinies that are bad or that don't change very much from the original in this handmade bunch from Generation 6 and onward. This still happens, but not as often, and is usually in the regional or mega forms of older Pokemon which try to mimic their original shinies. The handpicked shinies can be so creative at times, and it really does feel like the developers were having a blast making them, as they weren't afraid to try colors completely opposite to the base form, but also at the same time taking care to make some of the colors still have meaning. Although Scarlet and Violet's Pokemon did have some bland shinies like the Frigibax line, and the starters being more subtle changes compared to previous gen shinies, but most of them also followed the trend of being completely different or having the opposite main color scheme to the original design. And the box legendary shinies are some of the best we've seen in a long time. But this raises two questions. If I only like some of the newer Pokemon's shiny forms but not their normal designs, does that mean Pokemon designs are getting worse? And what exactly makes a good shiny Pokemon? You can find that out in these videos here.